All right. We're back for another episode of the Bad Ideas podcast with Mr. Craig Crisler. Craig, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here, Nick.
Awesome to have you here. So you're the CEO of Support Ninja. What do you guys do?
So, Support Ninja was founded, 10 years ago. All of us, the three founders and myself, so it was myself and two other founders, we found it kind of based on the concept of we had all been startup guys and we had used outsourcing before and we hated it. And, for lack of a better term. And so we were like, oh, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so we primarily focused on the concepts of like, how do you kind of leverage the global talent pool effectively and really build tech enabled teams that will kind of drive efficiency for scaling companies. And so that was the start of it. I mean, our first tagline was "We scale startups." That was kind of our first tagline, and from there we work with over 240 clients worldwide. We have operations, four different geographies, primarily a remote company. Most of our people work remote,
That's the
and
future.
essentially what's that?
That's the future.
It is the future. I mean, we leaned in, and I joke. I'm probably one of the few people that says thank God for COVID, because it kind of convinced all of our clients that you could work remotely and it'd still do great work. If we had been set up to be remote and no one really wanted to let us do that, and now everyone got comfortable with it. But really, we hone in. A lot of our clients are kind of tech startups, tech innovative companies, AI space, SaaS companies, CX companies. And what we do is provide kind of a wide range of CX services to them and kind of CX consultancy around helping them leverage this incredible, I love global talent. I think there's incredibly smart people all over the world. It's just a matter of where you find them. So enabling these companies to kind of create these teams with us and build opportunities for them to grow.
Yeah. Have you found? I think there's an interest on both ends. There's an interest in freelancing. There's an interest in remote work, and then there's an interest in outsourcing and hiring. But I think there's a lack of understanding on both ends, like from the applicant side and from
Right.
the company side. I mean, you guys have been in this while it kind of was born over the last 10 years in particular. Like,
hmm
how do you see the space? How do you organize kind of the different companies into categories, and where do you think you guys fall on that spectrum?
No, it's a great question. I mean, like, so, the way to think about, if you're talking about leveraging global talent, there's kind of like three groups, like you mentioned. So there's kind of like the independent contractors, which is like, the folks who are just kind of out there doing the work. And the interesting part about that model, in terms of an independent contractor model, is that like you still have to manage them, you still have to check their quality, and you still have to do all this stuff. But then they're also independent contractors. So they're not your employees, and so they can walk away tomorrow and, and stop working, and it would there's not a lot of recourse. Um, as an example, like there's times where we've used independent contractors for certain types of work, like that we say, oh, this would be great to bring somebody in that's a specialist to do this type of work. And that's a lot of where independent contractors play,
Mhm.
is there. Then there's the other kind of aspect of it, the kind of the tier below it, which is kind of the EOR model. So employer of record, which is where, essentially, you want to hire globally, you want to leverage some talent, let's say in another country or something like that. But, you're technically overseeing them, but they're still an employee of yours. You're just paying a third party to kind of manage that for you.
Mhm.
And that's a little bit more interesting in terms of, you have a little bit more control and you have a little bit more oversight from an HR perspective. So it's not that you can just walk away like an independent contractor could. And then there's what, kind of where we fall in, which is outsourcer, which is essentially we're somebody who gathers a team, we find them, recruit them, train them, quality assure them, make sure they're safe, make sure they're happy, healthy, and all the other stuff. But you're usually coming to us and saying, hey, I need help. I need a strategic partner around some component of my work that we're doing. Can you help me? And so then we build a whole team
Mhm.
around that. And in that case, it's a little bit more, I would say, out of those three options, probably the safest of the options, to be honest,
Mhm.
because at
Well,
least
because you
then,
guys are managing, you guys are
yeah, we're
involved
managing
in the
for them.
oversight.
Yeah. So we have a lot more oversight. We're taking care of making sure that we're hitting where you need to be strategically. And then we're providing more value to you over time around the work that we're doing. And what's interesting with us is, as an example, is that, where maybe under an EOR or an independent contractor, you may only have like one task. Like for us, a lot of times our clients come to us maybe with one problem. Let's just say it's like a customer experience problem. we end up doing a lot more different types of work for them because they understand we're experts in the space. We know how to build teams. We work with you collaboratively to kind of optimize your work. And so there's a lot more to it in that way. And it's interesting for us because we have folks who come to us under, one thing, and they'll be like, but you can do this. We're like, oh yeah, we can do this too. Like, did you know? And so they'll want us to use it for that. And it's great. It's, I joke about my work is it's like all the things I love about, my background is 12 companies, 4 exits, so, pretty okay in terms of success, but
I'm pretty okay. Just more.
well,
Yeah, yeah.
25%, I guess it's okay. But I think I'm just a startup fanatic. I love young companies as they're growing and scaling, and kind of how do you take the concept to the actual thing. And so it's kind of like I get all of the excitement I have in doing that kind of work in my career, but with across multiple different companies. And so I get all of the best of it without having to be in it,
Mhm.
and the pain that's involved in like the early days of a startup. You
Yeah.
know,
That's wild. I think it's a fascinating space, especially like now at the time we're recording. Anyway, there's a lot in the news because of what Elon and Doge are doing with
hmm
like
hmm
most of our federal staff is remote and they're not managed the right way. And I see this because we're in the space too. We're in the specialist space, so like we don't
hmm
build teams like you guys do, but we're trying to help people find that like I need an expert for this niche thing that I will never use again, but I don't want to go through a hiring cycle for it.
right.
But our approach, I'd like to think, is similar to yours in that like how you manage these people is what determines success. It's not the person or the company; it's what's in the middle. And
hmm
if you can present a solution in the middle, which you guys clearly have cracked the nut on,
Right.
you create unparalleled opportunities for the people internationally and for the companies. Like it's the
Yeah.
only place there's like a mutual financial ROI upswing.
Absolutely. I always point to one of our earliest customers and shockingly, they took a chance on us in the early days was Gates Foundation. And,
Yeah.
and it was really interesting because when they came to us, they had like this kind of one specific problem. And that was 7 years ago now. And same team, the exact same team that we've had with them the whole time. But now what we're doing for them versus what we did with them at the beginning is completely different, but we've evolved with them and managed that team and worked with them and kind of created this opportunity and been able to kind of grow and scale with them. And that's where like, you're right. It's that management layer. Like it's not just what we hire people to do the first time. It's what's going to happen in 5 years, what's going to happen in 6 years. Cause companies evolve, things change.
Mm-hmm.
But having that layer and that ability to kind of adapt and evolve with folks as they grow and scale is probably, I think, one of the things that we're particularly good at, and sounds like you are too.
We're getting there. I think we're trying to respond to the market speeding up. So it's awesome for you guys that you have 10 years under your belt there. So you already know how to move fast. You've already kind of like gotten your bruises. We're collecting them now.
hmm
But I think especially with AI, like companies are trying to find more efficient ways to do things, and it's no longer optional. Like you can't really tolerate inefficiency within your business, especially not your service team.
Yeah.
Like you can't be sloppy there. You can't have someone who's been here for 4 years and knows everything. So we're just going to tolerate what they're doing. Like you have to improve or get out. And I think, guys like you are going to be absolute mission critical for that because you can execute at a high level and scale fast, which companies are going to have to either buy or learn how to do on their own, which is probably much more
Absolutely.
expensive.
Well, it's funny because I think prior to Support Ninja, I was in the previous startup I was in prior to Support Ninja, we were doing AI, specifically a large language model around handwriting.
No
And
way.
it was kind of like OCR on steroids, basically, is what it was with AI enablement. And what was interesting about it, like coming from that background, is that like data, you can't hide in the way in which the language models work and the way in which those kind of algorithms work. It's really hard to hide in that data. And so even for folks who are performing and stuff like that, I joke with folks, it's much easier for you can't fly under the radar because the algorithm will pick it out of the data and be like, by the way, you have this abnormality in this particular data set that's showing somebody inefficient. And then you're like, oh, wait, I thought I've been doing the same thing for the last year. Well, it's picking up that you've been doing the same thing for the last year.
Yeah.
It's harder to hide even in this AI world now.
Yeah. yeah, harder to hide, and you have to move faster. But I think the consumer benefits, right?
Oh, for
Like
sure, for
better
sure.
service teams, because of you guys or training. I mean, do you guys do any training, or is it just building the teams? Yeah,
We do, we do. We have a whole, we have it's called the Global Learning Experience Office. That's like their whole job is to train and build and do that. We actually, it's interesting. We've been just deploying this new tool that we're using actually for interviewing using AI, and then that in turn is feeding into our training team to help kind of
that's amazing.
upskill, like if we see gaps in certain types of things. And it's really interesting how that kind of speed at which you can work now using some of the enablement. It's transformative in so many ways, and to that point, I definitely, I wholeheartedly believe this. I actually think AI is going to improve our humanity. I know
It
it's weird to
should.
say,
No,
but
it
like if
should.
it kind of, if it kind of takes out the menial stuff, the stuff that's just like kind of like grunt work and stuff like that, and now you can elevate your thinking. Well, shouldn't we all be like more EX? We're having more better employee experiences and stuff like that with
Yeah, yeah.
AI. And so it's kind of like it helps us all be connect more, ideally, if it works right. But
I was talking to so one of our engineers is in Pakistan, and I know a lot of folks watching who've tried to hire freelance. Um, you probably have mixed experiences, which I fully blame on like the interface. It's never the person; it's the way you engage with the person. This guy's like a superhero, like a living superhero. Saved us so many times. But he was asking me, he's very interested in AI, and he was asking me about the education system in the U.S. because he was like, I don't think we'll have teachers anymore. I think it's all going to be AI. Actually, I have a friend who helps run a foundation called Teach the World.
mm,
And they did a pilot a couple of years ago, or maybe 6 or 7 years ago, where they put math and science games on tablets, and went to a village, I believe in India, could be Pakistan, I believe in India, and gave it to the kids for 2 hours a day for like a month. And they all outperformed their peers by like Six Sigma factor and standardized testing that had been in school for years studying the same thing.
hmm
So even outside of the professional space, like it can make us like better participants in this global community we're growing into.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I actually think it's the role of the teacher will change, right? It will be more about how and what ways are you facilitating knowledge acquisition in terms of and discernment versus necessarily acquiring understanding or memorizing things or having to teach it. It's going to be like how and what ways are we teaching people to discern data effectively or discern outcomes, or something like that. And then also like the social aspects of it, which I think, if you talk to any teacher, at least most of the teachers I know, it's like the majority of the work of a teacher always honestly is like handling the social things within the classroom and
Yeah,
how people are interacting and like how do you behave in a society, like that's like a big lift of it. My stepsister just is going to retire here from being an elementary school teacher. I said, will you miss anything? She's like, actually, I'll miss like forming humans.
yeah,
And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting way to put it, but it's true, right? Like that's a lot of
absolutely.
what she does. Yeah.
Like a professional role model, right? Maybe that's what teachers turn into. So the AI is subject matter because it can adapt on a people to people level, and the
hmm
the person is helping facilitate that social development.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think we need to set a cutoff for future bad ideas guests at like 11 startups because there's just we're
Yeah.
never going to get to the idea. There's too many interesting things to pull out of you. Um, but with that, let's do this. We'll pull up the idea. We'll make fun of it for a couple minutes, and then see if we can fix it. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Sounds
All right.
great.
Let's see what we have. Hopefully, it's as interesting as AI in schooling. Otherwise, I'm just going to trash it and ask you about AI stuff.
I know. We end up just having the AI in schooling startup
We'll
podcast.
find a way. I'm on a mission now. So, our bad idea today that we've not seen before. It's kind of AI. Job descriptions generator. It's an app that writes job descriptions that are vague but strangely appealing to encourage applications from the broadest possible talent pool. So this seems like a way to compete for talent by using AI.
hmm
Maybe post multiple job listings to compete
Yeah.
for talent using AI.
So like just like a word. tweaker,
It's
so it just
like a
tweaks.
job listing spam. You know those like cold
Yeah,
outreach
yeah,
AIs? Maybe
yeah.
it's that, but for job listings.
Interesting.
What's the reaction? I see the
Well, like
face.
to me, like what my reaction was, I honestly was like, yeah, like I can do that right now. Like
Yeah.
I can feed it into a model and tell it make this job description more appealing to X, Y, and Z, and any of the any of the current LLMs will spit it back out probably.
This is how we tie it back to Support Ninja. So there are all these CX focused AIs out there,
Hmm.
but they're like, we'll sell you a trained agent.
Right.
One, is that even possible? And two, like, is it achievable with the pure AI, or do you still need humans in there at some level?
You do you do still need humans in there at some level, and the main reason why is because, and this is where we're very specific in our approach to AI, and then part of it's because of my background, like in terms of working in AI before, is that the if can you go in and turn on an agent that will respond to questions? Yeah, you can. Like you can definitely train a bot to do that, and leverage a large language model if you want, and it will probably give you some decent results. The problem is with that is that it's generalized knowledge still, and if it's not specific knowledge, then you have to train it to be specific on the knowledge, and so you still need training. It still needs to be trained, like the model itself, and so that training and what's happening in the background still needs to happen from a human. Being able to look at, whether it be the knowledge base articles that this particular, CX you're supporting is, or, whatever it may be, you still need all of that information to be able to do it. And what's interesting about the flooding that we're seeing of all of this CX tools and stuff like that, it's like the mass rush. It's funny. I'm old enough to remember all of the like two booms, like the cloud computing boom and the mobile computing boom. I remember
Mhm.
those two booms, and I also remember like the app boom, like where
I've
everybody
got
in
an
the
app.
world built an app. Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone's gonna have an app. Like, but not everyone really needs an app. Like, not everything needs an app. And so it's like it is that kind of sense right now of like, oh, we're just going to build all these self-sufficient agents and whatnot, not realizing the background. There's a ton of sufficiency. Some like you need people in the background to make this thing actually work well. Like it just doesn't. It's like the Amazon stores, right? Like that's like the big secrets of the no cashier Amazon stores, not realizing the background. There's thousands of people in India and outsourced all over the world that are actually QAing everything that's happening in those stores to make sure that the system's working correctly. Um, so no, you can't get it. But I also think a lot of it's the rush right now, and it's almost like this idea, to be honest, is kind of like leveraging
Volume.
the rush.
Yeah, specific volume.
Yeah,
I think it relates back to our teacher conversation because any
yeah,
teacher will tell you if you take a classroom and scale it from 10 students to 25 students, like it's a lot harder. And,
yeah.
I think all these like off the shelf AI promises, like the second you get them running, you realize the volume of communications they're handling and the number of support staff you need to keep an eye on that
Hmm.
actually grows. So you're not really replacing support people. You're just moving them from supporting customers to supporting the AI. I know
Right.
that's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like one of the things that we've been working on for like the last 2 years is so the way in which we deploy AI at Support Ninja is like it's very specific to the client. So what we do is we do like a thorough analysis with our innovation team of their process, their workflows, the scripting, everything that's happening there before we even think about putting a tool into them. Because we need to understand what's the playground look like. Going back to the school analogy, what is the playground like? Where are we actually operating? And then once we have all of that information, then we go, okay, well, here's where in the journey of a customer with them, like, here's where the potential optimization points are, and let's deploy some tools into there and then see how they work and if it actually works for them. Um, and the one thing I think that a lot of people miss is those tools are very generic, meaning the kind of off the shelf tools are very generic in response. They're not really customized to you. So, um, meaning that they don't know the brand voice, like they don't understand the brand voice, and so it will just respond like in the most business quote
Generic.
generic way, you know that it can. versus like if it's a brand, like it's very specific. And so I have this one story of where we had a high end brand that we work with that kind of approached us and said, "Hey, we want to put an AI bot, into our system," and they're a high end luxury good, and I was like, "Well, talk to me about like what are you trying to achieve here? Like what's the goal? Like what strategically?" And they're like, "Well, probably be more cost effective and stuff like that." I'm like, "You're probably right. It would be." I said, "But the your average transactional sale is $10,000 is your average transaction, and
Yep.
so." I'll tell you probably from a branding perspective, if you're going to spend $10,000, they are 100% going to want to talk to a human.
Yeah.
you know, Probably. And they're like, "Oh, okay, well, but everyone's leveraging it." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I understand that." But what we ended up doing was helping them in the background. We put some tooling in to help the agents have like an AI tool that was kind of feeding them information that they
So
could
it's
be
still a
better.
human. It's
Yeah, still
still,
human, but
yeah.
they're supported with AI, and now they have this kind of level of support, and like that's just a better approach when it comes to that stuff.
Mhm.
I always tell people, and the University of Texas actually asked me to come speak at this panel upcoming because I always tell people the same thing is like money still exchanges hands between humans. There's no AI buying things or selling things yet directly. Like
Mhm.
there's the exchange still occurs with a human to
That's
human.
a scary future. That should be a
Yeah,
bad ideas episode.
it's scary. We can talk about agentic agents all day long if you want, but that's a trip. But like that still happens, and so like remember at the core of this is that it's still human centric. All AI is around supporting humans still, and so you still prompt engineer. I mean, that it's a human writing something for another tool to give you a response that you think will be useful. And so there's still always this component of, how are we training it? How are you running it? How are we making sure that it's the best and most aligned solution for you?
Mhm. I'm still stuck on AI buying and selling. That's gonna haunt my dreams later.
Well, yeah. I mean, I will say this. I don't know how much you read Anthropic's stuff and what they're working on,
Not a
but
ton.
very like if you're kind of an AI geeky guy who
A
like
little
me,
bit.
kind of into that stuff,
Yeah.
what they're doing and how they're thinking about stuff, it's really very interesting because it's very approaching it the right way of being like, how and what ways could we get to a self-sufficient agent, and then what it should a self-sufficient agent be doing, actually
Mhm.
be doing, versus kind of being like, we're just trying to build one that will be self-sufficient. They're actually being like, well, what do you actually want it to do for you? Like that's
Mhm.
the better question versus just saying, have it,
Everything.
yeah,
Clone a human. Yeah.
yeah, Skynet, basically like appearing, like that's like kind of the end times approach. But I I do think though there is a state where data will get to a point in the way in which some folks are ingesting data that you could have an agent that's kind of thinking like an AI agent that's actually thinking for itself. And so there's times where we see a future, and we've kind of been mapping it out with a couple of our clients where if we get it to a point where it's smart enough, it could start to action certain stuff. So as an example, let's say someone calls in and they have a return. If they know it's a return, the agent could start to like do the work in the background for the person on the phone to say like, "Hey, I'm prepping this in preparation. Please let me know when you want me to execute it."
Mhm.
And that is that. But that takes a bunch of steps to get it to that point where you want it to do that. And so it's still a ways away. Maybe not decades, but in compact systems it would work.
Can you tell us more about what you're doing on the hiring side with AI?
So on the hiring side, so there's a few things that we're doing that I think is really interesting. I mentioned it before, like this. So one of the things that we've been testing, we do a lot of testing. So one of the things that we're big on is we don't deploy and without proof of value, like meaning that
Mhm.
it actually can show what it's doing. So one of the ones I was mentioning before is, so we do a lot of work with kind of how and what ways we can vet, because we get a lot of people who want to come to work for us. I mean, I'm not trying to brag too much, but Sprint is a great place to work. It's fantastic, great benefits. People like working with us in this industry because we're a fun place to work. in a not usually fun industry. Traditionally, people don't think of outsourcing as like a great place to work, but
Hmm.
the one aspect of it. So, for example, since we're hiring internationally, we need to understand level of English proficiency, maybe multilingual proficiency, meaning like can they speak Mandarin and English and other things. And we've deployed a tool that we can do kind of this initial interview with an AI tool that allows basically it's an interview like you and I are having, but the on one side of it there's an AI agent basically asking questions. So we've put in the
Audio
job
or just all
description.
text?
Yeah, we put in, well, no, it's actually voice.
That's wild. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so what it does is it actually we've fed in the job description, we've customized some of the questions, and then it's doing a few different things in the background. So it's not only analyzing kind of their experience and proficiency in response and all the other stuff, but it's actually analyzing their grammar, the way in which they speak, their language proficiency, things like that. Their sentimentality, meaning like do they have a nice phone voice in terms of handling certain types of escalated questions, like things like that, and then giving us feedback to know whether or not we should kind of proceed with them in terms of the next step. Now, it's not the end all be all. We still have somebody there judging the results and looking and listening to the interview. But it definitely helps us a lot because it allows us to vet through, a few hundred applicants a month, and do it in a way where, we can see if there's, potentially some great people in there that we just didn't realize that that's what they were doing.
That's amazing. So you said it's trained on the specificity of the job description. So
Yeah,
a vague AI generated job description is probably
not
not
enough.
conducive to.
No, not enough. Not enough. And that's what was because like, well, what I was thinking about when we were talking about that job description indicator was I was thinking about one of the marketing team has for me they've trained one of the LLM engines to talk like Craig, you
That's
know,
scary.
which is weird, right? Like but they've done it and like still anything that goes out like that I write, but the the but sometimes there's like stuff where they just want to get like like a quote from me or something like that, and they're saying, well, rather than bother Craig, maybe I'll prep a quote and see if this works for him or something like that, right? And so they train, but they had to do all this work in the background of like, look at Craig's posts and look at Craig's writings and look at all this stuff and like come back and give us this persona that is Craig, and stuff like that. And so now it's trained, but like, it's pretty good. It's not great. Like there's times where, cause I use man a lot or brother, I'll say bye brother or like something like that. And it will like drop in one of those randomly in some, response. And I'll be like, oh, that's weird. Um, but like in the job description thing, you would have to train it to understand what you want it, what the output should look like, and what's considered ideal, and and that takes time and like having a conversation with it long enough till it understands you and remembers what it is that you're asking for.
Yeah. And it seems like it'd probably take longer to train the AI to do than just to do
And
on
just
your own.
yeah,
So you're
just
creating
write
work.
it real quick. Yeah, totally.
Speaking of booms, this makes me think of like the early 2000s SEO boom when
Hmm.
people were doing like the cool trendy like Black Hat before there was Black Hat, where you'd have like a 6,000 word blog, but half the text was like white on a white background, so
Yes,
only Google could see it.
yes.
That's what this is. It's like we'll generate so many job applications that anyone looking on any of these boards will like default click on us.
Right,
So we
right.
have first right of refusal type of thing.
Well, now you see this whole cottage industry. I was noticing today on LinkedIn, speaking of this, it was the first time I'd seen it, but it was I saw two articles today. It was said, how do you game the AI resume reviewer tools? And basically saying like, here's some suggestions on getting through the AI
The
thing.
screeners, yeah.
The screeners, yeah. But it's interesting for us, like, but as a side note to that, we don't use that at Support Ninja primarily because the discriminatory stuff within those screeners is still super strong. Like those
Mhm.
large language models aren't good to use that as a leverageable tool to use for resume screening. It just doesn't. It's too discriminatory, and it just doesn't pass the test. And so, we don't use them. And I think that's the other part of AI, like the dirty secrets of AI people don't really talk about too much is, like, how do we know, for example, this job description AI generated tool might do this really racist, job description, not because it's leveraging a large language model that's built on data that's, inherently flawed. It's a large language model. There's
Mhm.
problems with the data for sure. Even in a closed system, there will still be probably some levels of problems in the data.
Yeah. I think the problem. So I think we both agree that this is a really bad idea, and you could probably just do this on top of ChatGPT. So there's no need to have this as its own business. But I think what they're trying to do is create a competitive advantage on the applicant side, and I think that ties into your business more than ours because of the staff size you have. But do you see, like, as remote picks up, do you see a world like maximum benefit for the employee where there's so many different ways they can earn, whether they're working like full time for you, like freelancing a little bit on the side, full time freelancing, like, and they have a full time in person, like more and more and more optionality for high skilled labor creates a greater need to attract the best people. It's going to create massive competition,
Hmm.
especially all over the world. So
Hmm.
how do people create it outside of being a super fun place to work, which is the way you should
Right.
compete? Like
Right.
how else do companies compete to make sure the best people find them?
I actually think, because what popped into my head as you were saying that was actually because we really view the talent pool as global. Like, that's how we kind of view it.
It
There's
is.
no
It is.
boundaries. There's, like, it's just the best person. I mean, our chief revenue officer lives in New Zealand. Like, she was the best person. Like, we found her. And um and so, if you think about a pool as massive as that, and like, and then try to be like, well, how do we attract the best people? I actually think, like, part of where we do well in is that, sure, we put out all the help wanted ads and, do all other stuff, but for us, like, it's like going and finding those people who are really excited about potentially working, or doing the hunt, to really find those people, whatever it looks like, LinkedIn, networking, all of that stuff, and really finding those people that are excited about working for a company like ours, and then, or then maybe not even excited, but like getting them engaged and having a conversation around, like, here's what, because I do think there is a shift towards the employee, which I think is great. I think, to your
The
point,
best possible outcome.
it's great. Like, because I was joking, my oldest is in college and she's worried about, how am I going to make money after college? And then I was like,
However you want.
I'm telling you, like, there's so many ways compared to when I was in school. Like, there's
uh,
a thousand ways to make money. There's going to be somebody who will pay you.
mhm.
And and I think that in order for you to stand out as an employer in that space, is creating personal connection. It is so easy to not be personal in this business, but really create personal connection, and develop an opportunity. And, as an example, like, when we recruit folks and bring them into Support Ninja, they talk to like 3 or 4 humans, like real humans, about Support Ninja before they're actually hired. So they understand what we are like and who we are as people. Um, I think the other thing to stand out, in this space is, and, you know, it is this is going to sound so like startup trite, but that core values thing, but actually exhibiting them publicly, like, to say that, hey, this is what we believe in, and this is how we operate as a business, and this is how we, push into things. I think that's helped, a lot, because then people are like, oh, like, this is a different place. They're not the same as somebody else. Because it's one thing to have these core values on the wall, but then to be like, as an example, for us, one of the big things we're working on right now is we do quarterly philanthropic stuff, and we're doing this big thing for pets right now, and we're helping this
Uh,
service animal rescue and stuff like that, and so, but we're publicizing it, we're talking about it, we're asking for donations outside of us to help us with this, and all of this other stuff. But see, people see that and they're like, oh wow, this is, sure, we love technology and enablement and agents and all that stuff, but they seem to care. And so, in that alignment to actually I said in a tech-driven world that is recruitment right now, to actually have the human side of it be the most important thing is probably, I think, a big part.
So that's how we fix this then. So the AI isn't writing the job description because we need a human to do that,
Mm.
especially if we're promoting a human company.
Right.
Has to come from 121. But maybe the AI submits your job listings, and maybe the time you save submitting job listings by using an AI, which could probably do that pretty well and super efficiently, you spend time creating some kind of introductory experience, um, almost like a round table or like a webinar for the role. So
Yeah.
candidates can log in and engage with you, get a feel for the culture and the people before they apply.
Right. Yeah. I
Maybe
can
that's
see
the business.
maybe that is the business. The other thing I was thinking about in terms of that business is like, yeah, it's like an efficiency gain, right? Like if there's a
Mm-hmm.
way that you can get some efficiency gains, which is a big part of AI, which is, I mean, most people just think of AI, just they think of Gen AI, which is, just give me a bunch of information about this thing. I'm going to ask you a question. But the more impactful stuff I think is actually efficiency gain stuff, like the way in which you can take some process and say, hey, I want you to optimize this and make it easier for me so I don't have to do it. Um, that I think could really be impactful. Or if the other thing that would be interesting, it kind of, if you could train the model, which you could pretty easily, if it could ingest the job description, but then know that you need to look at all of the ways in which you could advertise this and then place accordingly based on the type of job that it is to kind of go, there's an interesting, that's a really interesting one.
Could figure out how to target your job listings for you.
Right. So it's just not blasting. It's actually being like, oh, okay, well, this is an engineering role. So I'm going to go to these top 5 engineering schools and go to their college boards. And I'm going to go to these, those kinds of things. Like that would be a pretty powerful tool. The database would be pretty massive, though, to try to figure out because you figure like thousands of job descriptions. But
LinkedIn, you can
yeah,
find it.
yeah, exactly.
I think this is exciting, especially whether for your daughter or anybody in the job space. I think this is the future because of stuff like you're doing at Support Ninja. You're creating a more competitive world for the worker because they can work anywhere for anywhere. Um, and the onus, I see in the very near future, the onus will be more on us as employers to win employee attention than the other way around for the employees to earn their job, which I think will be really nice. It'll be a really really nice future.
Well, I'm actually, I think it is. It's funny. We say internally like our talent team, which is what we call HR's talent for us. We call them talent. Our talent team, they say they're people, and I think that's kind of, that is the future. I think is that the reliance on, sure, AI is going to take this kind of like a lot of like the lower stuff, but that means that the quality of talent you want to attract are going to be higher level. They're going to be folks who can do critical thinking, and they're not just going to be your entry level folks as much anymore, because a lot of that stuff may be handled by some AI. And being that you want that, you want learners, you want people who are growing, and those people are hard to attract and hard to keep, and purposefully because they're great. And
Mm.
so how much it is shifting towards that, I think it's great, despite what's happening in the US right now, like especially when it comes to the federal government, like despite what's happening, which it looks very anti-employee, like, but I do think all of this is changing and just kind of pushing us all towards the idea that, oh, ultimately, like when it comes right down to it, people still drive everything that we do. And enabling those people is probably the most important role we have as leaders now.
hmm And I do think that the pressure we're creating by automating a lot of this customer service and business development, like back end stuff, is going to create the need for even more staff. So there's going to be tons of, as sad as it is what's happening at the federal level, there's going to have so many places for them to land.
Oh my
And
gosh, yeah.
even people who just pay for their experience. It's
Because of
really a
all this,
special time.
yeah, yeah, it really is. Well, and I think it's still true. The last bit of data I saw about AI job loss, like, everyone's talking about it when Gen AI, all this job loss. There was more AI job loss due to investment in AI, people cutting jobs because they needed to have a bunch of money to put in AI, than actual job loss due to AI taking a job. Like it was very, very little. I think you're just going to see an elevation of the workforce. The workforce is just going to get smarter and better.
That's the purpose. That's our purpose.
Yeah.
Awesome. So grateful to have you here. What's the most helpful thing for people to come see? Are you looking for customers, job applicants, all of the above? Where do people
All of
go?
the above, all of the above. I think, for if anyone needs to reach out to us, feel free, hit us up at supportninja.com. Our whole approach here is that, if you're a scaling company and you're thinking about how and what ways I could leverage a global talent pool, you know, um, come talk to us. Like we've seen all kinds of different things. We focus our efforts in the CX space because that's where we've been doing a lot of work, but we're always there to help and try to see if there's a way that we can help folks out. And then, of course, if we're always hiring. There isn't a time my talent acquisition team, if I didn't shamelessly promote that we're hiring, they would probably be mad. They're always hiring. We hire between 100 and 120 people or so a month. So we're
Massive.
always hiring. Yeah.
All right. We'll send both your way. I think what you guys are doing is super special. And, I think as much as the promotional value goes to the outsourcing category, the knowledge on how to run it that you've proven over a decade is properly invaluable because people get that for free. Like they're paying for the work and they get your brain for free. That's just a massive lift.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and that's what we hope. I always tell folks, the main thing I always say is there's two ways people leave a company: either you fire them or they fire you, and it's the same with us. Like either a client fires us, or we fire them, and the one thing, and if they do fire us, I said I would want that reason to know that they moved on and they're better than they were when they came with us. That's all that I care about. Like
Mhm.
that's the most important thing because we always want relationships to be value creating, right? And if it's not valuable for both of us together, then it has no value.
Yeah. What's the
Um,
point?
so it's I will say it's funny. Out of all the startups I've been in and done, like this one, I have the most affinity for, right? And I probably say this every startup I'm in, but like this one, I particularly do enjoy because it's everything I love, which is people. I just love the interaction of people and watching them grow, whether it be a client or our own teams.
Yeah, just hearing the way you speak, you can feel that across the show, and I'm sure everyone who listens to it will feel that too. But Craig, seriously, super grateful to be on your schedule for this, to download some of your brain and talk about what we both agree is a really bad idea. But maybe a couple good ones bled into this. I think some really
I know.
interesting stuff
It's
was
always the
here.
thing. I mean, I always wonder sometimes if you fed the better idea into a chatbot and say, make this better, what would it come out with? You never know.
Never know. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.